Luna, a small-sized pregnant bobcat, began acting unusually restless and clung to her caretaker Mark, refusing to let him leave. Their bond had always been strong, and her fearful, desperate behavior signaled that something was seriously wrong. When the veterinarian attempted to examine her, Luna reacted defensively. Everyone laughed. But Mark knew this was something else. The animal he cherished was desperately trying to tell him something, and he was running out of time to figure it out. What did Luna know that the humans couldn't see? Why was she so desperate to keep Mark close? The truth behind the bobcat's strange behavior was more horrifying than any of them could have imagined. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The morning mist clung to the pines of the Black Pine Wildlife Sanctuary, a sprawling haven in the Oregon wilderness dedicated to animals that could never be re-released. For Mark Callahan, a senior keeper in his late 50s, the air smelled of damp earth, cedar, and the sharp, metallic tang of the predator enclosures. He'd worked here for 2 decades, and his joints ached in the chill. But his steps were light. His first stop was always the same. "Mornin', Lou," he murmured, unlatching the heavy service gate to the bobcat habitat. From the shadow of a basalt rock ledge, a small bobcat emerged. This was Luna. She was diminutive for her species, barely 20 pounds, with tufted ears that seemed a size too large for her delicate, spotted face. But what she lacked in size, she made up for in spirit. And at the moment, she was visibly, profoundly pregnant. Her belly, swollen and round, swayed with a cumbersome grace as she trotted toward him. She didn't meow or roar. She greeted him as she always did, a low, breathy chuff and a firm press of her head against his denim-clad shin. "Doing okay, Mama?" Mark asked, his voice a low rumble. He ran a practiced eye over her. Her fur was glossy, her eyes clear. He'd been her primary caregiver since the day she'd arrived, 5 years prior, as a traumatized, mangled survivor of a poacher's leg-hold trap. Their bond was the talk of the sanctuary, a quiet, profound understanding built on patience and respect. He filled her water dish and checked the den. Everything seemed normal. He gave her a final scratch under the chin, a privilege she afforded no one else, and stood to leave. "All right, girl, I've got the cougars to check on. You be good." He turned. A flash of tawny fur cut him off. Luna was at the gate, blocking his exit. "Come on, Lou, move it." He gently tried to nudge her aside. She didn't budge. Instead, she let out a sound he had never heard before. It wasn't a hiss or a growl. It was a high, desperate trill, vibrating with anxiety. She pressed her body against the wire mesh of the gate, looking back at him, her golden eyes wide with a plea he couldn't decipher. "Luna, what's gotten into you?" Mark's brow furrowed. He reached for the latch. In a move of shocking boldness, Luna reared up and placed her 2 front paws flat on his chest, her claws carefully sheathed. It was a gesture of pure desperation. Mark froze. He looked down at the animal, her swollen belly pressing against his shirt, and felt a cold knot of dread form in his stomach. This wasn't affection. This was terror. Josh, a new keeper in his 20s, walked by, pushing a wheelbarrow of feed. He stopped and chuckled. "Looks like someone's got separation anxiety, old man," Josh said, leaning on his rake. "She's not gonna let you go." Mark kept his eyes on Luna. "It's not like that, Josh. Something's off." "She's just hormonal," Josh replied dismissively, tossing a piece of straw. My sister was the same way with her first kid. Cried every time her husband left for work. She's nesting. She's decided you're her, I don't know, her birthing partner?" Josh laughed again, a bright, careless sound in the quiet morning. "She's just being a girl, Mark. Don't let her boss you around." Mark felt a flash of irritation. "She's not a girl, Josh. She's a bobcat, and she's telling me something's wrong." "Sure, Mark, whatever you say." Josh shrugged, still smiling, and continued on his way. The sound of his wheelbarrow faded, leaving Mark alone with Luna and his growing fear. The laughter stung, not because it was mean-spirited, but because it was so ignorant. He tried again to move to the gate. Luna's reaction escalated. She dropped to all fours and began pacing, her trill lowering into a guttural moan of distress. She circled him, her body low to the ground, her eyes never leaving his. He saw a slight, uncontrollable tremble in her back legs. "Okay, girl. Okay, I hear you." Mark pulled his radio from his belt. "Sarah, it's Mark at the Bobcat enclosure. You need to come down here. Now." A crackle, then the clear, no-nonsense voice of Dr. Sarah Bennett, the sanctuary's chief veterinarian, replied. "What's the visual, Mark?" Her vitals on the remote monitor looked fine an hour ago. "The visual is a pregnant bobcat who is physically refusing to let me leave the habitat," Mark said, his voice grim. "She's in distress. It's not behavioral, Sarah. It's physical. I think she's in pain." A weary sigh came over the radio. "On my way. Don't engage further. I'll be there in 5. Mark sat down on a flat rock, a gesture of submission. "I'm not going anywhere, Lou," he whispered. Luna, hearing the change in his tone, crept forward. She laid her head on his knee, her body shaking, and let out a sound that was perilously close to a whimper. Mark stroked her head, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had no idea what was wrong, but he knew one thing for certain. Luna was terrified, and she believed he was the only one who could help. Dr. Sarah Bennett was a woman who trusted data. She lived by blood panels, temperature readings, and ultrasound images. She respected Mark's intuition. It had been right more than once. But a feeling was not a diagnosis. She arrived with her kit and stood outside the enclosure fence, observing. "She looks fine, Mark. She's alert, responsive." Just come inside," Mark said, standing slowly. The moment Sarah unlatched the gate and stepped inside, Luna transformed. The desperate, trembling animal vanished. In her place was a 20-pound bundle of fury. Her ears flattened to her skull. Her lips peeled back to reveal black gums and teeth of shocking white. A low, rattling hiss filled the air, a sound from the very dawn of time. She placed herself squarely between Mark and the vet. "Okay, so she's defensive of you," Sarah said, stopping a safe 10 feet away. "That's classic guarding behavior. Combined with the hormones, it explains." "No, you don't understand," Mark cut in, his voice tight. "This is different. To understand, you had to know Luna's past." Mark knew it better than anyone. He had been the one to get the call from the Fish and Wildlife Service 5 years ago. A rancher had found her, an adult, in a rusted, illegal leg-hold trap. She had been there for days, dehydrated and septic. The trap had crushed her rear paw. But worse, she had given birth while trapped. The tiny, stillborn kittens were beside her in the dirt. The rancher had wanted to shoot her. Mark had intervened. He had been the one to hold her down while the vets at the clinic, strangers in white coats, had amputated 2 of her toes and pumped her full of drugs. He was the one who had cleaned the weeping wound for months. He had been the bad guy who brought the pain, but he was also the good guy, who brought food, clean water, and spoke in a low, steady voice. It had taken a full year for her to recover, and 2 years for the trust to form. Luna's mind had drawn a simple, indelible line. Mark meant safety. Vets, with their sharp smells of antiseptic and their probing hands, meant the trap. They meant the loss of her babies. And now, here was Dr. Bennett, a vet, standing between her and Mark, her only safety, while the same terrible deep-body wrongness was happening all over again. "She's associating me with her trauma," Sarah diagnosed, her voice softening with clinical understanding. "She's panicking." "Let me try and calm her," Mark said. He knelt, keeping himself between Luna and Sarah. "Hey, Lou, it's okay. You know Sarah. She's a friend. She just wants to help." He motioned for Sarah to approach slowly. But the moment Sarah took a step, Luna lunged, not at Sarah, but at Mark, hooking her claws into his jeans and trying to drag him backward, away from the threat. "Damn it," Mark hissed, his face pale. "I can't get near her, Mark," Sarah said, backing away, "and I can't check her vitals from here. That trembling isn't good. It could be anything from preeclampsia to a breech birth. We have to sedate her." "The sedatives?" Mark's voice cracked. "Are they safe for the kittens?" "At this stage? It's a high risk, a very high risk," Sarah said bluntly. "But if she's in a critical state, we're risking all of them by waiting. It's your call. You're the only one who can get a pole syringe near her." Mark looked at Luna. She was panting now, her sides heaving. She was in pain, terrified of the help being offered, and begging him, the one person she trusted, to make it stop. He felt a wave of nausea. He was going to have to betray her trust to save her. "No," he said, standing up. "Not a pole. Not here. She'll fight it. The adrenaline will spike, and it'll be worse. We'll do it differently. We'll bring the transport crate in. I'll get her in. We take her to the clinic. And, Sarah, get the soft restraints, the padded ones we made for the eagles." Sarah nodded, her face grim. "Okay, let's move, fast." The sanctuary clinic was a small, sterile building that smelled of bleach and fear. It took 3 of them, Mark, Sarah, and a subdued Josh, to get Luna onto the stainless steel examination table. Mark had managed to coax her into the crate, but the moment she was in the clinic, she had gone frantic. Now she was secured, not by ropes, but by wide padded Velcro restraints that held her body secure without causing pain. It was a technique they'd developed for birds of prey, but it worked. She was immobilized, but not trapped. Still, she fought, twisting her head, her eyes wild. "Mark, she's going to hurt herself," Sarah warned, prepping a small ultrasound machine. "I'm right here, Lou," Mark said, moving to her head. He put his gloved hands on either side of her face, forcing her to look at him. "I'm right here. I'm not leaving. You are safe. I promise you, you are safe." She let out a final, despairing growl, and then, as if a string had been cut, went limp, her gaze locked on his. She was still trembling, but she had surrendered, placing her fate entirely in his hands. "Okay," Sarah said, her voice low. "Josh, dim the lights. Mark, keep talking to her." Sarah applied the gel to Luna's shaved belly. Josh stood in the corner, his arms crossed, his earlier cockiness completely gone. He looked terrified. "Okay, let's see what we've got," Sarah murmured, sliding the transducer. The black and white image flickered to life on the monitor. "There," Sarah said, a small smile touching her lips. "There's a heartbeat. Strong. 140. She moved the wand. And there's another. And, oh my goodness, a third. 3, Mark. She's carrying 3. Mark let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Relief, potent and immediate, washed over him. 3? She's just full to bursting then. Maybe it's just false labor. Maybe she's just scared. Josh chuckled, a nervous, reedy sound. See? Just hormones. Told you. Sarah's face went rigid. Wait. Her smile was gone. She was all business. Mark, look at this. She pointed to a dark, amoebic shape on the screen, nestled just behind one of the flickering kitten sacks. That's not a kitten. That's fluid, a lot of it. Fluid? Mark asked, his blood running cold again. It's outside the amniotic sacs. It looks like it's on the uterine wall itself. Her movements became fast, efficient. She prepped a long, fine needle. I need to draw a sample. Mark, hold her. Hold her steady. Mark didn't take his eyes off Luna's as he felt the tiny prick of the needle. Luna tensed, a low groan escaping her, but Mark just whispered, "It's okay. I'm here. It's almost over." Sarah drew back the plunger, the syringe filled with a thick, cloudy, greenish-yellow fluid. She looked at the syringe, then at Mark, and all the clinical detachment fell from her face. "Oh, Mark," she whispered, her voice thick with sudden, terrible understanding. "It's a uterine infection. A bad one. Pyometra, or something close to it." Josh in the corner finally spoke. "What does that mean?" "It means," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly, "that she's dying. The infection is localized for now, but she's going septic. If that wall ruptures, the infection floods her system. We lose her in minutes. We lose all of them." Mark finally understood. The pieces slammed into place, each one a separate physical blow. The restlessness, the trembling, the pain, the desperate pleading eyes. She wasn't being hormonal. She wasn't nesting. She wasn't having separation anxiety. She knew, Mark whispered, his throat closing. He looked at the animal on the table, who had trusted him even as she was being tied down. She knew she was sick. She couldn't tell us. She was asking for help. The truth of the morning, of the entire last 24 hours, landed on him. The laughter from Josh, the casual dismissal, his own confusion. Mark leaned his forehead against Luna's, and for the first time in his 20-year career, he wept. The tears streamed from his eyes, hot and silent, dampening the soft fur on her head. "She was telling me," he choked out, his voice breaking. "God, Sarah, she was telling me. And we were laughing." Josh made a strangled sound. "Mark, I didn't know. I'm so sorry." "Get the van," Sarah ordered, her voice like steel, cutting through the grief. She was already on the phone. "Get Director Stevens. We can't handle this. This is acute, critical care. I'm calling the veterinary teaching hospital in Corvallis. They have a specialist. If we leave now, we might have a chance." She looked at Mark, his face buried in Luna's fur and her own eyes filled. "Go, Josh! Now!" The 2-hour drive to Corvallis was a blur of flashing lights and frantic prayers. Mark refused to leave Luna's side. He rode in the back of the climate-controlled transport van, sitting on the floor by her crate, his fingers laced through the wire. He never stopped talking. "You're a fighter, Lou. You know you are. You survived the trap. You survived the cold. You're going to survive this. You just have to hold on. We're almost there. I'm not leaving you." They were met by a team led by Dr. Evans, a specialist in high-risk exotic animal pregnancies. He was grim and spoke in clipped, fast sentences. "It's advanced," he said, looking at Sarah's chart and the fluid sample. "We have 2 options. 1, emergency C-section and spay. We remove the kittens and the infected uterus. The kittens will not survive. They're too premature. But it gives Luna the best chance." "No," Mark said instantly. "The second option," Dr. Evans continued, "is to try and treat the infection with the kittens in utero. We'll use a high-dose, broad-spectrum antibiotic drip. We'll flush the infection. But the drugs themselves could be toxic to the fetuses. We could lose them anyway. And if the treatment doesn't work fast enough, we lose her too. It's a 50-50 shot at best." Mark looked at Luna, now being transferred, weak and barely conscious, to a gurney. He thought of her lost first litter. This was her second chance. "Save her," Mark said, his voice raw. "That's the priority, but we have to try. We have to try to save them all. Do the antibiotics." Dr. Evans nodded. "It's the harder path, but I agree. Let's get her prepped." The next 48 hours were the longest of Mark's life. Luna was in a sterile ICU, in an oxygenated critical care unit. Mark wasn't allowed in. "He's not essential personnel," a stern-faced tech told him. This time, Mark didn't weep. He roared. "You don't understand." He seethed, jabbing a finger at the tech, his face inches from hers. "Her stress levels will kill her faster than the infection. She thinks she's been abandoned. She thinks she's back in the trap. She thinks I left her. You have to let me in." Dr. Bennett, who had stayed, stepped in. "He's right, Dr. Evans. He's not just her keeper. He's her primary anchor. In her mind, he's her entire world. If you want her to fight, she needs him." Dr. Evans looked at Mark, at the desperation and unshakable certainty in his eyes. He sighed. "Get him some scrubs." The vigil began. Mark sat on a cold steel stool outside the oxygen cage. Luna was a shadow behind the plastic, hooked up to a tangle of tubes and wires. She was barely conscious, but when he spoke, her ear twitched. "I'm here, Lou. I didn't leave. You're safe. You're a good mom. You just fight. You just hold on." He sat there for 2 days. He dozed in the chair. He drank bad coffee from a vending machine and just talked. He told her about the sanctuary. He told her about the new perches they were building. He told her the sun was shining. Dr. Bennett sat with him for a long time. "You did good, Mark," she said softly. "I should have known sooner, Sarah." "How?" She hid it. They all hide it. It's instinct. Showing weakness is a death sentence in the wild. The only reason we knew it all, the only reason she has any chance, is because she trusts you. She broke every rule in the Bobcat book to ask you for help. On the 3rd morning, A tech came in to check the monitors. She frowned, tapped the screen, and then her eyes went wide. "Dr. Evans," she called out, "you need to see this." Mark was on his feet in an instant. "What? What's wrong?" Dr. Evans rushed in. He looked at the chart. Her fever, it's broken. Her white cell count is dropping. The antibiotics, I think they're working. He shined a light into Luna's cage. Her eyes were open, not wide and terrified, but sleepy and aware. She saw Mark. A tiny, weak chuff came from inside the box. The recovery was slow, but it was steady. The infection, caught on the very precipice of disaster, began to retreat. Luna was moved out of the ICU and into a private recovery room. The new protocol involved not just medicine, but Mark. He was there for every checkup. A new tentative bond formed. Dr. Bennett would come in to check the IV line. Luna would tense, and Mark would put his hand on her. "It's okay. Sarah's a friend," and Luna, trembling, would allow it. Sarah, the vet, was no longer just the trap. She was the one who came with Mark. She was part of his safety. When the day came to return to the sanctuary, the entire staff was waiting. There was no laughter, only a quiet, profound respect. Josh was the first to help carry her crate to her habitat, which had been refitted with new high-definition remote cameras and a climate-controlled den. "I'll never second-guess your gut again, Mark," Josh said quietly, his face full of shame and admiration. "We all learned something," Mark said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Now let's let her rest." Weeks passed. Luna's strength returned. She roamed her habitat, her belly still swollen, but her step sure. She was a survivor. Then, one bright May afternoon, Mark was doing his rounds. He stopped at Luna's enclosure, not to check feed or water, but just to watch. Luna was not in her usual sunning spot. He walked closer to the new insulated den box, and he heard it. A high-pitched, mewling squeak. His heart stopped. He waited, holding his breath. A moment later, Luna emerged, stepping backward out of the den. She looked tired, but she looked proud. She turned her head, her golden eyes finding Mark where he stood, 20 feet away. She gave a low, soft chuff. "Come. See." And then, tumbling out behind her on wobbly legs, came two tiny, spotted, blue-eyed bobcats. One was bold, the other shy. They looked at the giant, strange-smelling world with utter confusion. Mark sank to his knees, pressing a hand to his mouth. The ordeal had taken a toll. They had lost the third kitten. But two had made it. They were healthy. They were perfect. Luna, the survivor of the trap, the mother who had fought a war inside her own body, had won. She watched her kittens explore a blade of grass. Then she walked across the enclosure, straight to Mark. She didn't press her head against his shin this time. She stood beside him as he knelt, and she rubbed her cheek against his shoulder. And then, for the first time in the 5 years he had known her, Luna did something new. A deep, vibrating rumble started in her chest. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated contentment. She was purring. Mark put his arm around her, and the keeper and the bobcat sat there together, watching the new life that, together, they had so desperately and so profoundly saved.